Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks, and there was a Yogi Bear movie. Remember that? For those who are unaware, Yogi Bear is a Hanna-Barbera cartoon about an anthropomorphic bear named Yogi and his best buddy Boo Boo trying to steal picnic baskets from unsuspecting tourists without getting caught by the park ranger, Ranger Smith. It quickly became one of the most popular and beloved cartoons from Hanna-Barbera, and at the height of a popular craze in Hollywood occurring in the mid-2000s, early 2010s, where Hollywood would bring back old cartoons in the form of theatrical movies, Warner Brothers was determined to jump onto this craze by using one of the most beloved Hanna-Barbera characters ever. But then they realized that they already used Scooby-Doo twice, so they opted for Yogi Bear. The film was originally supposed to come out on June 25th, 2010, but then it was pushed back to December 17th, 2010 to avoid stiff competition by a highly anticipated summer movie, which was, you guessed it, Grown Ups. But when the film was finally released in movie theaters on its new release date, it was a pretty mixed bag for the studio. On the negative side, it was one of the most critically hated films of the year and even received lukewarm responses from audiences. But on the plus side, despite a terrible opening weekend, the film was eventually able to become a box office success, earning over $200 million worldwide against a budget of $80 million. Now, for a film based off of Yogi Bear, that is honestly quite impressive, but when you compare it to other films released around this time, like Alvin and the Chipmunks The Squeakquel a year prior and The Smurfs a year later, the film definitely fell short of those other movies' heights. And because of that reason, as well as the poor response from critics and audiences, it's probably why A, the sequel never got into true fruition, and B, it unfortunately was forgotten in the sands of time by all who have seen it and faded into obscurity. Except for me, of course. Yeah, folks, believe it or not, but as a kid, I was really excited to see this movie. I don't know what it was, but every time I saw a trailer for this movie or a commercial on TV, I got really excited to see it. And as a kid who was excited to see this movie and got to see it on opening weekend, I obviously really liked it and watched it plenty of times as a kid, and I was really curious to revisit it today. However, you could probably imagine I wasn't going with the highest of expectations today, especially given how often I have revisited several films from my childhood, ending up realizing how terrible they were, and also the poor reception this film got back when it originally came out was also not very appealing. But so I still tried to go in with an open mind, and I decided to rewatch the film, and I honestly really liked it. Dare I say it, I might even call it a pretty decent movie. Now, don't get me wrong, folks, this movie isn't great. I wouldn't even call it necessarily good, but given the source material and all of the other films that this movie was released alongside, it actually turned out to be a lot better than I expected. What is the premise? The mayor wants to tear down Jellystone, so it's up to Ranger Smith to raise a buttload of money to keep the park afloat while also not allowing Yogi and Boo Boo to ruin all of his plans with their shenanigans. Now, obviously, this is a very simple and low-stakes premise, but honestly, the film benefits from that dearly. You see, the director has stated in multiple interviews that he wanted to maintain the true spirit and personality of the show by keeping it simple and sweet, as opposing to modernizing it and making it more complex and bigger than it has any right to be. And I have to give props. They really did a good job. It was executed very well, and thanks to its 80-minute runtime, it's short and moves at a pretty fast pace, making it not feel like you wasted your time at all with the film. As for the characters, let's start with Yogi and Boo Boo. And on the animation side, I think they did a really good job. You see, at this time, most animated live-action films bringing back old cartoons, focusing on making the characters look real and belong in the real world as opposed to, looking like their cartoon counterparts. But I think the animation team did a really good job here. They definitely found the right balance between realism and cartoony. They're expressive, they move very fluidly, the textures are all right, and they blend in with the real-world surroundings very well. except when they're interacting with the humans, and by that I mean like when they're touching or holding them, then it looks jarring. But for the most part, it all looks really good. As for the characters themselves, Yogi actually has a pretty solid character arc where he has to learn to stop being so self-loathing and a glory hog and attention seeker, because throughout the movie, as you could probably imagine, with him always proclaiming he's smarter than the average bear, he's definitely full of himself. But the best thing about it is that the film is fully aware of this and calls him out completely. All of his contraptions and inventions always backfire on him, and many of the characters call him out and put him down because of this. And he has to learn to not be so selfish and egotistical. And I think the film really handled that part well. And Boo Boo, while not really having much of a character arc here, is a good comedic foil to Yogi's antics. He is a very solid straight man and voice of reason, and can even often have some really funny lines here and there. There is also Ranger Smith, who honestly had a really big change from his cartoon counterpart and with his film counterpart, but honestly I think it was done for the better, as instead of being a responsible park ranger that he was in the show, he's just so sick and tired of these bears' antics, and it's just so funny. I don't know if it was the direction or the writing or how Tom Cavanaugh was playing it. Maybe it's because he secretly did not want to be in this movie. I can't imagine why. But every time he had a sarcastic remark or had to react to one of Yogi's crazy antics in the most exhausted, tired, and just completely out of it way, it was honestly really funny and really entertaining. Then there's the new character, the mayor, who on paper is just your typical mayor who is mad with power and selfish and evil. But the way Andy Daly is playing it and hamming it up and chewing up the scenery is golden. He hams it up to the point where he's so ridiculously evil and selfish that it is hilarious and easily has some of the funniest lines in the movie. And oh yeah, this movie is actually surprisingly funny. I laughed consistently and even at times really hard throughout of it. There's just something about the comedy that really works, whether it be how the characters react to one another, to how weird and insane some of these jokes get at times. It really made me laugh a lot. One of my favorite jokes here was when TJ Miller has to convince Yogi and Boo Boo to cause a scene at the celebration, and the way he does it for Boo Boo is to just explain how sad and pathetic Ranger Smith's life is, to the point where Boo Boo gets so concerned and distraught that he has to ask him how big his apartment is. It's just little stuff like that that can crack me up. However, folks, don't get ahead of yourselves. Like I said earlier, this movie is decent, but it's not good. It definitely has its fair share of problems. First, it succumbs to the dreaded live-action CG hybrid problem where we spend a bit too much time on the humans rather than the cartoon characters we care about. And it's not done the worst here because you actually like some of the characters, and at least it relates back to the plot and the simplicity and spirit of Yogi Bear a bit. But yeah, I cannot deny some of these scenes were really pointless and drawn out, and you really wanted to get back to the fun and entertaining aspects of the movie. As for the other characters, there is also Anna Faris, who is surprisingly underutilized in this movie. She's just the token love interest here and doesn't really get a whole lot to do. I mean, yeah, she has a couple of funny lines, but once again, she's just written so bland and uninteresting, which is a shame because she can be really good in movies, such as in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, because, they gave her a character and a personality and made her likable and funny to the point where you actually cared about her relationship with Flint Lockwood, and you could also remember that her name is Sam Sparks. Whereas here, once again, I don't remember her name, and I barely remember anything she really contributed to the movie. And then there's also TJ Miller, who, outside of that one admittedly really funny moment I mentioned earlier, I found to be really unfunny, and his whole subplot about wanting to be a head ranger at the park was really pointless and unnecessary. The movie's also got its fair share of jokes that don't land and are typical kids movie stuff like, oh, it's Yogi and Boo Boo dancing to a pop song, isn't that funny? Or something really awkward and stupid happening and they draw it out for way longer than it should. It's not like there are a lot of jokes that fall flat. I'd even go as far as say that a lot more hit than miss, but yeah, there's still some really bad jokes sprinkled here and there. And then lastly, there are the green screen and special effects. Now, let me remind you folks, this is a movie that costed $80 million to make. And I don't know if it's because they ran out of time or money, or if most of the money was put into the animation side, which, you know, I'm happy that the animators got most of the money in the paycheck, but yeah, the special effects and the green screen in certain scenes look really dated and bad. I'm hoping that it was because budgetary reasons or they were running out of time, because I definitely don't think this was the best they could do, and I don't want to believe that, but you never know. But otherwise, even with those problems, I still really enjoyed the Yogi Bear movie. It was fun to revisit this old movie that I liked as a kid and see it actually surpass my expectations. Again, it's not great, but given other films like this where they just use the IP for nostalgic dollars and just basically recycle the same trends and cliches we see in dozens of kids movies like the Smurfs or Alvin and the Chipmunks, it's nice to see that the filmmakers here actually genuinely cared about the source material and tried to make at least a very solid movie based off of Yogi Bear. And I can't complain. I had a really good time. I'm sorry the rest of the world, but I think the Yogi Bear movie is actually pretty good. And if this video convinced you to go check out the Yogi Bear movie, then feel free to check it out on HBO Max. You know, unless if they take it off their own streaming service for no reason. So please, go check it out there if you're interested, and you can always rent it digitally, so you don't have to feel like you have to buy it on Blu-ray in case you really don't like it. But still, check out the Yogi Bear movie if you're really interested, and who knows, you might just like it just as much as I do. Or you might just hate it as much as everybody else. But seriously, if you are the other person on the planet who genuinely likes the Yogi Bear movie as much as I do, please let me know. I'm so tired of being the only person on the planet who sees this movie as the true underrated gem it is. Please, I'm so tired of being alone. And those are my thoughts on the Yogi Bear movie. I know this was a much more different, special type of review than I normally do, and I just wanted to do something a bit more unique in terms of this movie, because I definitely had a much different opinion on it than most people do. So let me know if you guys are into these types of reviews and you want to see more stuff like this in the future. I can't guarantee they'll be as consistent and as frequently uploaded as my regular reviews, as these take more time to put together, but this was still a very fun and interesting video to work on, and I definitely would love to work on more of these in the future. So if you guys want to see more stuff like this, let me know in the comments below, and also let me know your thoughts on the Yogi Bear movie. Seriously, I am genuinely interested if there are any other people who like this movie as much as I do. So please, if you are one of the few people on this planet who likes this movie as much as I do, or maybe even more than I do, please comment down below and let me know. Or if you just generally do not like this movie, I'm also curious to hear why you don't like this movie. Also, comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.